How about a little suspension 101 right here at the Babcox Garage Studios? You guys, when it comes to suspension, I got some good news and I got some bad news. First of all, the good news. For you technicians out there, suspension systems are made to wear out. That's good news. It's going to move, it's going to articulate, has to work with the steering system, and the parts, well, they're replaceable. That's what they are. Now, the bad news for DIY drivers, the suspension system's going to wear out. You're going to have to get it fixed. You're going to have to check it. And believe it or not, probably maybe only 1 out of 10 cars make it on the alignment rack to get in alignment. Why is that? Well, check this out. This is actually a pre-alignment inspection, and there's a lot that goes on when they're looking underneath your car. On the pre-alignment inspection, you can see on the left-hand side of the graphic, they're actually going on a road test. They're driving it. They're looking for things like bump steer when braking. They're going down the road. Is the steering wheel returning to normal? Steering wheel pull. Then they go and they check all the tires. You can tell a lot. We'll talk about that a little bit later, about tire pressures and tire wear patterns. Then they're looking at the rubber bushings, upper control arms, lower control arms, everything down there to the steering linkage. On the bottom on the steering linkage, we're talking about tie rod ends, idle arms, center links. Depending on your suspension system and what kind of steering system you have, there's all kinds of checks. And if you go up to the top right there, well, you see the ball joints, power steering, tires and wheels, and then they look at the brakes. They make sure everything's in order. Then they actually go ahead and put it on the alignment rack and check the caster, camber, and toe and all the different angles. But the problem is, if you don't have a good functioning suspension system, alignment's not going to hold. So here's a couple tricks for you. You can go out in the driveway and perform these, no problem. I always tell you, well, it's not a good idea to work on cars with big pry bars and hammers. I lied. Suspension systems, you just want to get a big old pry bar. You want to get in there, you want to start pulling and tugging on all the different components and just look for some movement. Any abnormal movement in the strut, in the shock, in the ball joints is going to be a problem. You can see them right here. I have on the table an actual control arm. Now this control arm is actually loaded up here with a ball joint, and this ball joint right here actually connects to the spindle, and you can see this one's just flopping around and the boot's torn. So once the boot's torn like that, it gets contaminated in there, it's going to be a problem, and you don't want that to separate. That's actually what's holding your wheel on. Over here we got these bushings, both sides completely shot, just rattling around in there. You would hear that when you're driving, but that pry bar would give you a good indication of what's going on here, because this whole control arm would be shifting or moving. Another thing you can do, just visually look for a visual inspection. Look at your shocks, look at your struts. This one right here, it's leaking, it's pouring out fluid. You'll see that. That's a problem. You want to go ahead and address it. And then a couple other things you can do. You can do what's called a dry park test. Get a buddy, be safe, put the car on the ground with the weight on it, have somebody shimmy under there and just pull it to the right or to the left, the steering wheel. If you have a parallelogram steering system or you have an actual suspension or rack and pinion, no matter what it is, something's going to buckle or give. There's going to be some movement down in the suspension system. Just track it down and see which one of the joints have the problem so you can go address that. But if the whole thing's buckling, it may be time to do a whole suspension upgrade. Now, last but not least, you can look at tire wear patterns. We'll start with the top left-hand side. If you look at your tire and it's feathering, that's kind of going across from one side to the other, that usually indicates you have a toe problem. That's an alignment angle. But you can simply just have it worn out in the middle down there. You see that? Well, that's overinflation. Go down to the bottom one, both sides are wore out. Well, the tire is just underinflated, it's flat, and you're wearing both of those sides out. On the other one, you have one side wear. That's usually a camber angle, something to do with alignment, but the tires really aren't aligned right, so you're going to get that one side continuously wearing. Good indications of suspension. Last but not least is cupping. You see the cupping down there? A lot of times when the cars start to bounce and shocks get wore out, you get that cupping. Just make sure you check out your suspension. Look at that. Keep your car rolling safe and keep it like factory new. This has been a lot of in-depth information. If you have any questions, just drop it in the comment section below. I'm John Gardner from Babcox Garage Studios. We'll see you next time.